Morning. Today is the 19th day of Shvat, the 29th of January. And though we missed the first reading, which was super relevant to the events of the last few months, I know that you can't imagine why in the world Jethro would be related to the events of the last few months, but trust me, it is. When you'll see the wonders, you'll see it. I'm behind, it's not out yet. Today is probably the most practical topic that I've heard from Rev Ginsburg over the years, and it has to do with business management. It shouldn't be too surprising because today's reading is Jethro's advice to Moses on how to run the judicial side of the people. And let's just listen a little bit. When Moses' father-in-law saw, I'm reading from Exodus 18, verse 14. When Moses' father-in-law saw, meaning Jethro saw all that Moses was doing to the people, letting them stand while he said, "What is this thing that you are doing to the people? Why are you alone seated while all the people stand around you as if from morning until evening?" And what he really means here is that Moses is judging from morning to evening. He's the judge, and there's only one judge for the entire people. Now, this is, in a sense, the ideal state, that the prophet of God is the one who judges, because he is obviously inspired by the divine justice. However, this can't last. It doesn't work. You have to scale in some way. You have to figure out how to flatten the hierarchy, as it's called. So Moses' father-in-law said to him, verse 17, what you are doing is not good. You will surely wear yourself out, you yourself, as well as this entire people that is with you. For this matter is too weighty for you. You will not be able to do it alone. Therefore, listen to me. I will give you advice, and if God agrees with you, you be the people's representative before God, and you shall convey the cases to God. Meaning, there are certain cases that need to be brought to Moses. However, you shall caution regarding the rules and the teachings, and inform them of the path they should follow and the deeds they should do. Meaning, your other duty is to teach. And to caution here is to teach, actually. And you shall discern from among all the people men who are well established, God-fearing men of integrity, that hate money, and appoint them over the people as leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50s, and leaders of 10s. They shall judge the people at all times. Every major case they shall bring to you, and every minor case they shall judge themselves, to ease your burden by sharing it with you. If you do this, and God so commands you, you will be able to bear up, and all the people as well will arrive at their destination in peace. So what Jethro is doing is he's actually setting up a modern structure. You have to remember that, like we said, that the ideal still is to bring things to Moses. But there has to be a hierarchy, or a flat hierarchy, not a hierarchy like this, but rather a flattened hierarchy where there's many levels. And the way that he set this up is very interesting, and we'll say more about this at the end, towards the end. But what we want to look at right now is this idea, this movement into a concept of a hierarchy that looks like this. And I want to read to you a little bit from what's going to be in the Wonders, how this works out in what is called the dynamic corporation. We talked about this once in the past. The dynamic corporation is a booklet that Rabbi Ginsburg wrote on this concept of how to construct a company based on Torah. And what we're going to see now is the very basics of this and what Jethro changed. So the three major arenas of interaction that characterize the corporate environment, and this is any corporation, it doesn't matter what the size is the interaction between the company and its employees, the interaction between the company and its markets, and the interaction between the company and its investors. And so these three interactions require three principles that he calls them involvement, quality, and flow. So involvement it basically governs the relationship between the company and its employees. And this is the main thing that Jethro changed. We'll see this in a moment. The quality has to do with the company and its markets, because whatever the product or service is, it's really judged by the quality of the product or the service. And the company, its investors, has to do with cash flow. All kinds of flow, but flow of information. Also, there's also flow of information between the company and its investors, but it's mostly cash flow. Now, these three words together in Hebrew, involvement, quality, and flow, they spell the word me'az, because involvement is me'uravut, and quality is eichut, and flow is zrima. And these three together, they spell the word me'az. And without getting into everything that's discussed in the pamphlet, in this booklet, we'll just say that this word me'az is also an acronym. I understand that there's a few levels here, but bear with me because we're going to get to the point in a second. It appears in the verse, it's the three words that say, this is a camp of God. Jacob said when he saw the angels, this is a camp of God. And this is a camp of God, machane elokim zeh, it also forms this word me'az, which again is the acronym of involvement, quality, and flow. So the image of a camp of God is a fitting symbol for what every Jewish company should strive to become. The camp was a basic organizational structure that defined Israel's first phase of development as a people, right? Encompassing both their movement and their settlement during the 40 years in the wilderness. They were called the camp of God, and it became the first paradigm of constructive group activity within the Israelite community. Before that, there was a family. So the extended family clearly prefigures the camp as a basic organizational structure depicted in the Bible. So a lot of people think that first there were tribes, but if you read any kind of political history of the Jewish people, you'll learn that first there were tribes. But tribes were actually part of the encampment, when you had a camp. Before that, there was a family. So before Israel became a nation, it was known as the house of Jacob, a recognized spiritual as well as socio-economic unit held together by the bonds of a common origin and destiny. So consequently, any company, this is a very important principle, aspiring to become a camp of God, should first seek to emulate this model of the extended familial community. Now, the modern corporation is actually an even more extended version of the camp, and the involvement, the point of involvement that we said before, the first thing, the interaction between the company and its employees, was actually derived and developed by Jethro in today's reading, in what we just read. The first to recognize the value of a flat hierarchical system where lower level functionaries are invested with maximum responsibility was Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses. In proposing a more democratic system for educating the day-to-day affairs of Israel, he showed great insight into the efficient and productive use of bureaucratic systems by suggesting that the judiciary be constructed in pyramid form. Why is it a pyramid form? Because you have the heads of tens, meaning that there was a person who was responsible for 10 people. Then you had a person who was responsible for 50, for 100, and for 10,000. Sorry. Not 10,000, for thousands. So this is a hierarchy, but notice, and we haven't discussed it yet, and we won't have time to do this today either, this is a very deep mathematical construct, that it goes from 10 to 50 to 100 to 1,000. The 50 in the middle is not clear. So if you were just doing logs, for instance, log 10, that would make sense, 10, 100, 1,000. What is the 50 doing in the middle? So actually that 50, when you do the mathematical analysis on this, the 50 is essential to understanding what the great innovation of Jethro was. And this is a topic, I think I've discussed this before in some sense. I don't remember when. But we have a long article about it in our upcoming book on articles in mathematics, different subjects that Reb Ginsburg has treated through the years. In any case, what he did was he took the camp, and instead of making it Moses on top and everybody below, he built a hierarchy inside. So this is called a flat hierarchy. Now, the trick here is, and this you don't know if you don't open up the commentaries, is how this system of review worked. Now, I'm just going to whet the appetite. I can't go over the whole concept. But just in short, years ago he had a student, his name was Aryeh Nechaisi, and he actually used this in a very big factory that he had with a few thousand workers. And he says this was the best organizational structure he'd ever worked with. And he called it check the checker. So that's the easiest way to describe what the commentaries say about this. And basically what they say is like this, that the head of tens would be responsible for 10 people, and the head of 50 would be responsible for 50. But it didn't just work like that, that the head of 10 would only meet with 10 people. He actually would have meetings with the 10 people with the head of 50s. So the head of 50s, actually, that's what it means, that he's the head of 50. Because otherwise he's just the head of 5. Because if he's just the head of 5 people who are the heads of 10s, so he wouldn't be called the head of 50s. So actually what he had to do was, he had to have actually 50 meetings. And the meetings were with 2 heads at the same time. He called it check the checker because you had the head of 10s being responsible for the 10, and then the head of 50s having to have a meeting with the head of 10s and with each one of his subordinates. So this is a whole system of how to ensure not just interaction, and not just the relationship between the management and the employees, which makes it into a family, but this was also a way to ensure quality. The only way to really ensure quality is to have actually a double rung system of checkers. You can't just check the person under you. You actually have to be checked by the person above you with the person under you. That's the real secret of Jethro's whole idea. And the whole innovation comes from these 50s. We wouldn't know it if we didn't have these heads of 50s, both mathematically, which we're not going to get into at all, but as I just explained about the head of 50s, who actually has 50 meetings. Let's say every month he has to go through 50 employees to make sure that everybody is doing exactly what they need to be doing. So this double hierarchy, which is enfolded, and then it continues on above that also, but again, this needs a lot of discussion about how to actually do this, but this allows an organization to grow to almost any size, but yet maintain quality and the involvement of the management. So that the management is really always knowing exactly what's going on. This is especially important when you're talking about something like educating, about a judiciary, where the review can't just be of the rung beneath you. It actually has to be 2 rungs. Whoever's on the 3rd level has to see the 2 levels below him. And that's actually the deep concept that Jethro here taught. And this is the crux, one would say, the most practical side, maybe, of the entire Torah. And this came from Jethro. It wasn't by mistake. It came from Jethro because we understand that he was the symbol in a certain way of all the wisdom of the nations at the time. He had 7 daughters, which we usually correspond to the 7 wisdoms, and there's a lot to be discussed about that. But that's all for today, and I hope I hope I sound less like a frog tomorrow, and I'll see you tomorrow.